Hello, everyone. So I would just like to please request that everyone mute yourself if you are not speaking. My name is Dr. Mary Rope, and I am the Department of the Ethnic Studies, or the chair of the Ethnic Studies Department at Stanislaus State. And I'm really happy and really honored to welcome you to our eighth annual Indigenous Peoples Day, which is the vision of Donald Bañales, who's also a faculty member, a longstanding faculty member in the Ethnic Studies Department. I'm not going to take up too much of your time because I'm so excited to learn and to be inspired with all of the individuals who have agreed to honor this Indigenous Peoples Day with us, specifically about the ongoing legacy and impact of California Native ancestral ways that are definitely still with us and still really bringing about dynamic and innovative and much needed renewal and resilience as we're going to learn about. And I just want to say that this time is also very special because this is always the first event of every academic year that kicks off our seven annual ethnic studies events. So it really sets the tone for the remainder of the year. And finally, I want to give a special acknowledgement to Kukanuchi, after which Stanislaus County and our university is named. His in Yokut's name was Cucanucci, and the Spanish conquistadors who came in and against whom he fought, and he galvanized and rallied a lot of California natives to fight against colonization. They took his name and they gave him a Spanish name, which is very common among whether we're talking about conquistadors, colonizers, or enslavers. And so Stanislaus County and Stanislaus State is a very interesting transliteration of the Spanish name that was given to Cucanuchi. And when I think about our campus and the Yokut lands on which we are able to teach and to grow and to learn, I really think about the quote unquote mascot, which is this kind of Michigan State Spartan looking warrior, as actually really underlying that, embodying the true legacy of Kukanuchi as a warrior and the fellow California natives who fought against colonization itself. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Katie Moats to kick us off with this year's Indigenous Peoples Day.
Alito, everyone. Chumachukma. Thank you for joining us this year for the 8th Annual Indigenous Peoples Day. Our theme this year is resilience and renewal, and we're specifically thinking about cultural resilience and renewal. And so we have three presenters tonight who all work with native languages, who are all invested in the continuation of cultural traditions, and who have all seen firsthand kind of the effects that the continuation of cultural elements can have. So to start tonight, I just want to say the following. We respectfully acknowledge that the campus of Stanislaus State University in the city of Turlock now exists on the ancestral and unceded yet colonized lands of the Yokuts peoples, and that most of us now living, working, and studying here are uninvited guests occupying stolen lands. We are obligated to honor the original peoples of this land and their ancestors for their constant, consistent, and careful stewardship of the creatures, plants, waters, and minerals around us. So I just had a couple of brief comments to contextualize our theme for this year. In Choctaw culture, we have a lot of traditional stories that are meant to teach us things. And one of the themes that comes up again and again in several of our stories is the importance of being who you are and the importance of not under pressure or stress becoming something that you're not, or allowing yourself to be made into something that you're not. And these stories speak to me about the issue of cultural retention and cultural continuity. In one of our stories, a hunter goes out hunting. He's hunting deer, and his behaviors are not appropriate. And because he doesn't follow the appropriate course of action, he gets basically turned into a deer. He falls asleep, and the deer he was stalking put pieces of deer on him, and he wakes up to discover that he has become a deer. And he has become a deer in the story because he didn't act the way he was supposed to, the way that he had been taught. We have another story about a man who becomes a snake, and he becomes a snake because he doesn't follow the taboos. He's told repeatedly, you're not really supposed to eat snake food, but he eats it anyway because he's curious. And he does this again and again until he finally becomes a snake with terrible, dire consequences because he becomes a giant snake that scares everyone, and the village ends up killing him over his wife's protestations. Finally, we have another story about people being pulled under the water when you're in a lake or a pond in still water. One of our stories says that there are these entities, these beings that live under the water sometimes in some places, who can grab you and pull you under the water. They'll hold you under there for 3 days and make you into one of them. They're called the Okwanoholo. They're these pale-skinned fish people. And they hold you underwater and they turn you into them. You become one of them by being held under, by being taken out of your environment and put into theirs. And I don't think it's a coincidence that when Americans and the French and the English had a lot of interactions with the Choctaw Nation, Choctaw started referring to Europeans as Naholo. Naholo means spiritually powerful, but it also means these Okwanoholo beings that pull you into their world and make you one of them. And I firmly believe that that was part of the thinking behind originally using that word specifically to describe Europeans. Not anything to do with color, but having to do with the idea that if you go out into that world, often there's no coming back. And so what we want to do tonight is, while recognizing the challenges that many Native people have to deal with and that all Native communities are facing at any given time, we also want to highlight the successes we've had in cultural continuity and in community continuity. We still exist. We still have communities. We still have identities. We still have ritual and ceremony. It varies, right, group to group, but we still have those things because we have persisted. And that's really the main focus of tonight that we want to celebrate. So we have 3 presenters tonight. We will begin with Dr. Tiffany S. Lee, who is Diné and Lakota. She's from Crystal, New Mexico. She's from Crystal, New Mexico on the Navajo Nation on her mother's side, and Pine Ridge, South Dakota on her father's side. She is a professor and chair of Native American Studies at the University of New Mexico. She earned her doctorate in sociology of education from Stanford University. And her research examines Native youth perspectives with regard to language reclamation and identity. She also investigates socioculturally centered educational approaches, particularly to do with language. In 2016, she was awarded a grant from the Spencer Foundation to examine the impact of Indigenous language immersion schools on Native American student achievement. Some of her publications include Critical Language Awareness Among Native Youth in New Mexico, in a work called Indigenous Youth and Multilingualism, Language, Identity, Ideology, and Practice in Dynamic Cultural Worlds. And You Should Learn Who You Are Through Your Culture, Transformative Educational Possibilities for Native American Youth in New Mexico in Cultural Transformations, Youth and Pedagogies of Possibility. Dr. Lee is a former president of the Navajo Studies Conference and a former high school social studies and language arts teacher at schools on the Navajo Nation and at the Santa Fe Indian School. She's also a member of the New Mexico Indian Education Advisory Council for the New Mexico Office of Indian Education. Dr. Tiffany S. Lee Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for this invitation. And everybody, it's wonderful to see such a large gathering for your eighth annual event here. And for reading that long introduction. Thank you. I was wondering if I could share my screen. Great. Okay, let me pull this up for you. All right. All right. Well, I want to begin by, I'm sorry. Yep. Can you all hear me okay? And see the screen okay? Okay, great. Thank you. So want to begin first by introducing myself also in my language, as I've been taught to do to acknowledge my any relations in the crowd. So yeah, Tiffany Lee Nisha da Bethlejana Nishle, Natlane Bashashin Sanjukina Dash Chedo, Natlane Dashanala Tonsela de Nasha, Diet Awe Danedo Lakota Astana Nishle. So thank you. Basically, what I said was that my name is Tiffany Lee. I am from the Black Sheep Clan. I am Diné. I'm also Oglala Lakota. I come from Crystal, New Mexico, and this is who I am as a Navajo and Lakota woman. So I am a professor and former chair. I just stepped down from being chair of Native American Studies at the University of New Mexico. Um, and my background is in Indigenous education with a focus on language education for sustaining and revitalizing Indigenous languages. So today I want to share with you some of my, a little bit about my background, but also some research that I've been doing that I connect to this practice of which is a Diné term for kinship and community. It's a lot more, and I'll explain that. Um, but it's integral to ensuring Indigenous futures and well-being, which I think are very much connected to resilience and renewal. And the pictures here you see on the top left is Cheyenne River children right before they're being sent to boarding school. And then the picture below is a group of students from New Mexico from a local charter school called the Native American Community Academy. I put those pictures there to sort of juxtapose kind of how far we have been able to endure and be resilient and renew ourselves through mechanisms of education, but also just through our cultural grounding and who we are, as Dr. Moats eloquently talked about in those stories. So first, these are photos of the mountains and lands of my homelands. On the top left is where Crystal is located on the Navajo Nation in New Mexico, right on the border of Arizona. That mountain just to the right is called Sontsala, which means falling star. That's where my family is from, where my mother and all her siblings were born. To the right of that is a picture of the Badlands in South Dakota, where I'm also from on my Lakota side. And then I'm married into Cochiti Pueblo in New Mexico. That's the bottom photo on the left. So I have lots of family there as well. So I want to pay respect to and honor the people and of your place, the Yokuts Nation, and also acknowledge and pay respects to the place where I live and work, which is the land of the Tiwa in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the land on which the University of New Mexico sits. So I wanted to start with a little bit about my story and journey to Native American Studies. This is a logo that we used, one of our former graduate students created. It says knowledge, leadership, community, and sustainability. I know it's kind of cropped off there, but those were kind of the pillars of our department. But my journey to Native American Studies, I think, really falls in line because my family and schooling experiences fall in line with the topic of your gathering today around resilience and renewal. My mother was born in 1934, and she and her 10 other siblings, obviously their first language was Dene or Navajo. And they were the first generation in my family to go to school, mostly to boarding schools, some to mission schools, where assimilation was very much the goal. As you know, I'm sure many of you know the boarding school history. Um, and so that was a time when, at least on the Navajo Nation, language change started to really impact our families, particularly the generation after my mother, their children, so my generation. But I think based on their experiences going to boarding schools, they went to California. My uncle went to New York, went to different places around New Mexico and Arizona. My aunts in particular, all became educators because I think they wanted to change, that their experience for their own children and other Indigenous children. So by the early 1970s, and there was a time period when Native communities were, I don't want to say allowed, but given resources to control some of their own educational efforts through so some particular policies. But there was one school that I went to in the early 1980s, that it was
So you
called,
open them all? Why?
sorry, it was called
It was
Rock
what?
Community School. Sorry, somebody needs to mute.
Store?
It was called Rock
At the
Point
at the store?
School. I don't know if the host can mute the
In the
person.
morning at oh it's
Sorry.
Thank you. So Rock Point Community School was a contract school. So it was given in the early 1970s, this lump sum of money from the federal government to kind of design their own school and create, an educational approach that aligned with their community's values and language and assets. And so it was truly a bilingual school. The students who went to school there, my peers in the early 80s, their first language was Navajo. They preferred to speak in Navajo. And that's what they learned when they first went to school. And, kindergarten, first, second grade, they learned to read and write Navajo. Everything was through Navajo. Not till maybe third grade did they start learning academic standard English. And their classrooms would have an English teacher and a Navajo teacher, and it wasn't a teacher's aide, they were both teachers of the classroom, given, sort of equitable responsibilities of teaching through those languages. So that's what I mean by it was a truly bilingual school. Everything centered around Navajo experience, life, knowledge. So when I was in high school there, I took Navajo sociology, Navajo government. Sometimes it was all through Navajo language. And all the curriculum was centered around Navajo life. And so that was a huge, I think, accomplishment and example of sort of what Native communities can achieve through and renew, through an educational sort of mechanism. When I went off to college in the mid to late 80s, I went to a small liberal arts college in Southern California, and a lot of the students came from all across the country and went to these elite private schools, but their education was not very exemplar in learning about who Native American people are, because they didn't know anything about Native American people, at least not contemporary Native American, and not history, nothing very accurate either. But I had one class I was able to take there at that school, at that college, from a Chicana professor who was from New Mexico, but she taught a course called The History of Native America. And it was through that class that it really opened my own critical awareness and consciousness to issues beyond my own community. I certainly knew about some of the, oppressive schooling experiences and life experiences my own family had experienced, but didn't realize the state of it nationally and globally, the impact of settler colonialism on our peoples. And it was through that class that I really, it transformed my thinking and my awareness of it, and reading other Native scholars, like at the time, Vine Deloria Jr. and the book Black Elk Speaks, and just, being able to see these scholars write in very critical ways about that history was really empowering for me. So it inspired me to want to become a teacher and go back to, my own community and teach, students who are from my community about that history. And I did do that. And a lot of my aunts did that. And I think they were my inspiration as well. That eventually did lead me to Native American Studies, because Native American Studies, especially at UNM, was created by students. It was a demand that students had for the university to incorporate their stories, their knowledge, their history, their perspectives. So Native American Studies began in 1970 and didn't become, a degree, degree. We couldn't give degrees until 1999, but now we have a PhD. We have a bachelor's, an MA, and a PhD. And it really, I feel like, embodies those ideas around resilience and renewal, because Native American Studies is all about centering Native American people and their history and their knowledge and their stories. And I did learn from my own research, with seeing that impact that it had on me. I did research with students in Native American Studies and was able to make 3 conclusions about the impact. And what I concluded was that Native American Studies provides a home away from home. So students who are coming from, wherever around New Mexico had a place to be with other people like themselves, to share stories, to have people who understood them. It was like family. The second conclusion was that it inspired a critical consciousness, like it did for me. It really raised their awareness and understanding, and took them away from blaming themselves and their own people for sort of a lot of the oppressive realities of their communities. And they began to open their eyes to and understand, that history of settler colonialism that has impacted their communities in that way. And then the third thing I found was it really, because of that, generated a commitment to community. They wanted to now do something about it. It was transformative academic knowledge that they now wanted to transform the world for their own people and for people's understanding of who Native people are. So that brings me to returning to, connecting to the topic of this gathering, this role of that I mentioned earlier, and the connection I see between resilience and renewal to tribal sovereignty and to community well-being. I think community well-being and tribal sovereignty go hand in hand. If you're able to control your own life and exert your sovereign rights, then you can ensure your well-being according to your own philosophies and values. So I also feel like, language, in particular, Indigenous languages, are integral to our tribal sovereignty. Indigenous languages are how we express who we are and who we are in connection to our own lands. They are considered gifts from our ancestors. Indigenous languages and lands are essential components of cultural and linguistic sovereignty in particular. In this way, I feel land back movements have to include language back as well, given their shared history with colonial theft and oppression to our well-being. To express the meaning of sovereignty beyond legal definitions has to be done through our Indigenous languages, as they offer more holistic understandings of what sovereignty encompasses for Indigenous peoples. And again, going back to I see sovereignty as connected to community well-being, and encompasses all these, smaller circles of belonging, language, love, identity, epistemologies, and land. All of that those are practices of that's that can ensure Indigenous futures and well-being. So what is there's a Navajo scholar named Holly Colago. She's now at the University of, she's at Pennsylvania State University. And she has written a lot about how and education should be connected to, and community should be connected. So she talks about it here in terms of how involves family, compassion, cooperation, love, kinship, clanship, friendliness, kindness, unselfishness, peacefulness, thoughtfulness, and all the positive virtues that constitute intense and diffuse and enduring solidarity through respectful relations with nature and others. I share with you the concept of through these photos, which are photos from my niece's Kinalda, which is her coming of age ceremony, which is a 4-day ceremony with the last night being all night long, which helps to shape a young woman when she comes of age into a woman. And it takes a lot of community and family, coming together to provide food, to keep a fire going for 4 days and 4 nights, for grinding corn. That's my aunt grinding corn there. There's a lot involved that takes sacrifice as well, but it's all done with love and in kinship with one another, in relationship with one another. It's all to carry on these traditions. It's these practices, cultural knowledge, and community building that we want to protect and continue and convey as our expressions of cultural sovereignty for community well-being. So I wanted to share with you now a little bit more about my research, but and what example are more contemporary and specific examples of or models of community well-being through education. But I want to start with the impact of colonial influences and impositions. As you know, colonial education has had many repercussions, and I have a particular interest in language change. In my own family, I mentioned my grandmother only spoke Navajo, but all of her children, my mother, my aunts and uncles, they became bilingual once they went to school. And then their kids, my generation, has some Diné fluency, but we predominantly use English. So it really only takes one generation for a drastic language change and shift from an Indigenous language to English, even with a community like the Navajo Nation, which still has hundreds, thousands of speakers, but they are primarily at, my age and older. And schooling is primarily to blame for that. The federal policies, as I mentioned before, of the 1970s did provide for more control over education. I talked about Rock Point Community School, which really made Navajo at the center of their schooling. Those are some of the public laws that were associated with that, giving more funding for more control over education. However, the history of education for Native Americans does show a pendulum swinging back, to assimilation agendas. Sometimes provides more for self-determination. Other times it's more controlling. And what results is, for example, this case, the Yazzie Martinez versus the state of New Mexico from just, 8 years ago or so. The Yazzie family and Martinez family, it's a consolidated lawsuit. They were families who sued the state of New Mexico for failing to provide a sufficient and uniform system of education to all New Mexican children as guaranteed by the state constitution. So the lawsuit challenged the state's failure to provide students who experience low income, who are Native American, who are English language learners, and who are students with disabilities, the programs and services necessary for them to learn and thrive. And on July 20th, 2018, the judge, Sarah Singleton, ruled in favor of Yazzie and Martinez. Since then, it's been many years since then, but many tribal communities still feel the state's response to the ruling has been inadequate and has not created the change that was intended in the ruling. In fact, the Tribal Education Trust Fund bill that I reference here was put forth by Native legislators, state legislators, and allies in various versions over many years now as an initiative to provide more funding directly to tribes to support their direct control over their children's education. But it's yet to still has not passed or been funded fully. So that brings me to these models of educational sovereignty that embody this practice of that I want to share with you as that we can learn from. So these are different models that I've either worked on through research or through community, organizing. I'm going to talk to you about the first two, given our time limitations, and because there's a lot to share with all of them. But this is how I think policymakers and educators can address, lawsuits like Yazzie Martinez or in similar, states that have these similar kinds of problems. And these are models that are effective and meaningful for Native students and Native communities. They are they account for adaptations needed to ensure cultural continuity and holistic well-being. But most importantly, these models are community-driven approaches. So they are coming from Native people themselves. They are linguistic and cultural sovereignty in action and connected to relationship building in our communities. And they build our relations with one another, with the non-human world, with our languages, and with our lands. And again, this goes back to that practice of So I'm working with many colleagues on with these models. And so again, I'm just going to share the first two with you. Oh, sorry, that's not very clear. So I'm engaged in a national study called Indigenous Language Immersion and Native American Student Achievement. And we are using the three boxes that point arrows down to our primary research question there. Our research question is, what can a study of Indigenous language immersion, or ILI, teach us about improving educational practice for Native American learners? So we're using case studies, a national survey, and a comparison using a matched pair design of students who go to an ILI school or students who don't in the same community. What are their opportunities to learn and what are their outcomes? And so I just want to share a little bit about the findings. But first, what Indigenous language immersion is, it's a schooling experience where, today most of our children, at least in these communities with these schools, they come to school, their primary language is English. They might have some passive knowledge or hearing of their Indigenous language, but their language use is primarily English. So they come to school with, speaking English, but they are immersed in their native language in the whole time. Our study says 50% or more, but most of these schools is probably more like 90 to 100% of the time. Children are learning through their language. All the academic content from kindergarten through, most of the schools go through maybe, the end of elementary school, some middle school, and a few go into high school. But it's a total language, Indigenous language rich environment. And what comes with that is learning, songs, stories, cultural knowledge, engagement with community, cultural practice, and how academic content is all tied to that as well. And so I just want to share a few of the findings that really demonstrate, again, I think, that resilience and renewal of our people. One of the first findings is amongst these, this is primarily from the case studies, and I'll share some of the matched pair design in a little bit. But the case studies with these 8 schools that go from all the way from Hawaii to New York, they're using the language with children almost the entire time throughout their school day, and they're funded by publicly, or they're funded through charter school funding. Some of them have federal funds, others raise their own funding in their private schools. So what we're finding here is that ILI promotes relationality and family and community engagement. Many of the ILI educators and families express that education is for raising human beings connected to their communities, and that ILI achieves that for them. One parent talked about it like this. She said that every woman is an auntie to every child in her school. And ILI demonstrates that inherent relational paradigm. Another school leader shared it this way. She said, I really want to create speakers, but I also I really want to create people who know who they are and where they come from and be proud of that and to know how to run our ceremonies and how to keep things going. So to reach that goal, ILI, another thematic finding is that ILI privileges Indigenous knowledge systems. She described how, because they're learning through the language and learning cultural protocols and ceremonial knowledge that's tied to that, she described how the community will often call upon these students who are often, in elementary school to open their ceremonies in the community because they know the language and they know the protocols for doing that, how to open a ceremony in, a proper way in their community. So also finding other thematic findings here is that ILI connects generations past, today's youth, and generations forward. So what you see here is a quote from a student who I think he's 10th grade. He talks about, being in a ILI school, and he says, language is the key to the future and being able to bring back knowledge from the past to apply to current problems. Our Hawaiian people, they're entrepreneurs, they're voyagers of the vast sea, they're innovators, they're great agricultural workers, linguists, prophets, seers, observers. And he ended the sentiment by saying, and the only way to revive it is through the language of our ancestors. So in the second quote is from a teacher who talks about, she said, immersion students develop a strong sense of identity, having that same mindset our grandparents and ancestors had. It'll give them a good understanding of who they are, where they come from, and where they're going to go. In both of these quotes, the student is acknowledging the wealth of knowledge passed through language, and the teacher's quote shows her passion for connecting students to their grandparents and ancestors, which both again are demonstrate in action and are doing the work today for Indigenous futures and well-being. The last two findings I want to share from you from this study is that one is ILI is an enactment of Indigenous nation building and self-determination. Here, these quotes from a teacher and a parent. The teacher says, I really want the kids to be a good community contributor, be a positive change agent to their community. And the parent says, I want to bring the language back into fluency. It gives me the opportunity to give my children what I wanted that I couldn't get because I wasn't given it, to know more about our way of life. So these quotes, convey that the students are positive change agents for their communities, and together they're bringing the language back and they're building community and strengthening community. Another youth had asserted this importance of the land and said, I enrolled in this ILI school, so I'm able to connect with my ancestors and the land that I live on. And that's a picture of an outdoor classroom that's used in early spring for teaching children about sugar bush, which is where they learn how to get sap from trees, maple trees, learn the science of it, and they spend 1 to 2 months outside, often during the testing season of mainstream schools. And a school leader put it this way, he said, as Native people, we feel like it's our responsibility to take care of the earth. And that's how they do it, through outdoor classrooms and integrating that Indigenous knowledge and cultural practice into their schooling day. So the second finding here is that ILI also has intellectual rigor. And this is what we're finding in the quantitative component, the matched pair design. A Hawaiian teacher here says, our kids actually perform as well as their peers or even surpassing them in those English courses and on those tests. And then, of course, surpassing everyone in Hawaiian. So the idea that learning through your language is going to hold you back, is going to harm you in some way, is false. It's a myth. We're finding in this study that the children who take those standardized tests that are all in English, but they're learning through their own native language, are doing just as well, or they catch up and they do just as well in math and English on those tests as their peers who are going to all English only schools. And those ILI students are learning their language, speaking their language, know their culture and community, and have a strong sense of cultural identity. Okay, so I wanted to share this quote because I think it's fabulous. We feel that we should rename our study ILI and Native American student well-being instead of student achievement. But I want to share this quote from she's a brilliant ILI leader, Namaka Rollins from Hawaii. She put it beautifully, and she says here, for those who desire to be a part of a movement and to be educated in our language and philosophy around which we build our curriculum and everything that is unique about this place, that is nowhere else in the world, that is a viable path for education that everyone can benefit from. So it's a whole nother like mindset about the purpose of education and for our own communities and for building our communities. So finally, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. I feel like I'm way over. I'll just share real quickly what I'm doing with, please let me know, and we look at the chat or just chime in if I need to. Okay, thank you, Kevin. This is Sadgatelia. It's a Diné language nest that was started a couple years ago in Albuquerque. I'm one of the founders with some other community members, just founder in terms of helping to raise money to get it going. But Sadgatelia is also an immersion school, but it's a childcare where we bring in children as infants as early as 8 weeks old, and they experience, being raised through childcare practices that are rooted in Diné philosophy and Diné practices and Diné, values and cultural protocols. So we have infants, and now we have 2 to 3 year olds. It's just started our third year. It's guided by Diné traditional knowledge, and the goal is to produce first language speakers of Diné Bazad, which means Navajo language. So they will be bilingual students. They're in an English, environment outside of Sagittaria, but they're learning Navajo and who they are as Navajo people, for the 8 hours that they're there every day. And so the Sadgatelia has it's not just a childcare program, it's really to help the whole community. So yes, it has the language nest, but we also have a community program, a family program, and a caretaker program. The caretaker program is where those are the fluent speakers who take care of the children every day, but they have to engage in biweekly curriculum development because they have to learn how to do this with children whose home environments are primarily English. And they have to learn, sort of how to engage these children in this environment, in the cultural protocols and practices. So Sakadelia provides workshops and trainings in Diné philosophies and practices in child rearing for them. And then they're also able to help them to attend Diné ceremonies for their own well-being. The family program is similar, where the families are, they engage in weekly language lessons so that they're learning Navajo and can use it at home. They share a community garden. They learn about Diné beliefs in child rearing and are encouraged and supported in ceremonies. And then we have a community program, which now that, we opened right, as COVID was still kind of, heavy. But as it's, I don't know if it's lightening up, but now that we can, be with family more, or community more, we have a community program where that's a picture of a shoe game. That's a Diné, ceremonial game that happens in the winter. And so we provide things like that, and also can support community members in planning for their ceremonies. So I'm going to end here now with this question about what can we do next for the resilience and renewal of our Indigenous futures. And I feel like, we should support, understand, and transform education through these examples and models that I've shared with you. And so I end with a poignant quote from an ILI teacher who's actually Mohawk, who went to an ILI school and then came back and became a teacher there. And he talks about the future of his people. And speaking about his students, he said, even though they don't have the language yet, and the knowledge is coming back too about the land, about our connection to it, before I learned the language, I used to feel like, oh, we're doomed. It looked bleak, eh? But now I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like we're going to be okay. All right. Yeah, Pilamayaya and Nietzsche. Thank you. I'll try to stop share.
Yakoke, thank you so much, Dr. Lee. I imagine I'm not the only person here who wishes they had had the opportunity to be part of one of these immersion programs, because so much, right, cultural knowledge is built into understanding language, and there's so much you just can't get to without that. So thank you so much. I also love hearing about research that's uplifting and that says good things. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So next we have Mr. Chunya Johnson is going to provide us with a song before we have our next presentation. So Chunya, whenever you're ready, please feel free.
Palito sa hochevo ya chonya no watavi Johnson. Himok nitaga chata imaspesa ayima hochima bachelache. My name is Chonya. A lot of these songs, they're songs that have these songs are actually our prayers that have been passed down by our ancestors, and we're always taught the importance of praying and the importance of even when we have our dances, we you know our elders will ask us, well, why are we doing this? And a lot of times we have our dances. In my tribe, we have our dances so that when Creator looks down on his people, he can see that we're grateful for everything he gives us. And so I'd like to start out with a prayer. Hashtahlima himakasahaklo. Himaknitagan pimoklaya aita naha hatokon che holi topli pibana hoke. Kanimekma pimoklaya hoto pakan ilo e kana ape sako fechi ape apela ape pehlichi. Nitakayuka kan ishpi yukpale atogon chen yoko kepe bana. Okay. Creator, we want to thank you today for our people gathering, and we want to pray for all of our people struggling. We want to pray that you give us help and give us healing, give us guidance, and that we live in the way that you mean for us too. Oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, oh, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hey, hey, ayo, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, oh, hallelujah, oh, ere, oh, hallelujah, ere, yo, hallelujah, ere, Oh, hallelujah, oh, ele, oh, hallelujah, oh, ele, yo, yo, hallelujah, oh, ele, oh, hallelujah, oh, ele, oh, hallelujah, oh, ele, yo, yo, hallelujah, oh, ele. Oh, hey, hey, hi, yo, ale, na, yo, ele, yo, ale, na, yo, ele, oh, ale, na, yo, ele, oh, ale, na, yo, ele, yo, ale, na, yo, ele. Yo, alena, yo, ere, 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 yo, alena, yo, ere. Oh, hallelujah, yo, ele, yo, hallelujah, yo, ele, yo, hallelujah, yo, ele. Oh, yo, yo, Okay.
Okay, Achogma. Okay, Chunya. Thank you. We will come back to Chunya a little bit later. Now, our next presenter will be Paul Stewart. Mr. Stewart is a Pomo from the Elam Indian Colony. His degrees are in business, but his life, professional, and cultural experience are in Native American and American Indian government and organization relations, having apprenticed under his father, Richard Stewart, since he was young. Paul has attended many Bureau of Indian Affairs, Indian Health Service, California Rural Indian Health Board, and tribal meetings. Culturally, Paul learned of his own tribal culture from his grandparents while growing up on the Sulphur Bank Rancheria and attending many roundhouse dances and hand games gatherings. Paul's other area of specialty is music, having studied formally but not completing a degree. He's been a professional musician for over 20 years. He's released 10 albums and toured all over the world. Most notably, he has composed and released music sung entirely in the Southeastern Pomo dialect with traditional Pomo-style rhythms and the clapper stick instrument, while also combining modern music instruments and stylings. Mr. Stewart also teaches Native American studies at San Francisco State University. His life and work are a testament to the relevance of Native Americans in the modern day and of cooperation, collaboration, and creativity. Mr. Paul Stewart, welcome.
Hello there. Kevin, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm glad to be here. So, Paul, ilem tklabak. So, bostotse, hekro hekwi bostotse. In southeastern Pomo, I thank the universe, I thank the creator. And I'm Paul, I'm from Ilem. Southeastern Pomo, or what we call Kaitsnu, was considered an extinct language. My parents' generation, my dad, they were speaking it very little or not all. Most of them knew a few scant words or phrases and had forgotten most of it. The generation before him, my great aunt was one of our last fluent speakers, and recently our neighboring tribe, that's also southeastern Pomo, was able to get a language grant and hire her to work with a linguist to begin to teach the language again. So I was able to attend some classes years ago and be able to revive my own knowledge of the language. And when I was young, I spent a lot of time with my grandma, who was a fluent speaker of it. She would speak it all day and night. But yeah, language disappears so fast within a generation. And it's important to hold on to it as a way of our self-expression. So I'm Paul. I'm from a Lemonian colony. I consider myself a person of the world. I'm native, of course. I am Pomo, absolutely. Born and raised on my reservation, I know who I am. But I'm also mixed. I have blends of European descent and things like that. As a musician, I've been blessed to share my music around the world, and I got the opportunity to tour Europe several times. And on one of my tours in Europe, I actually went to Belgium, where my white ancestors, my European ancestors, immigrated from. Although interestingly, they're not Belgian, they are English and Scottish descent, but they were living in Belgium for at least 4 or 5 generations before immigrating to the United States. So I went back to their hometown on record that I knew, called Tournes-le-Gros, Belgium, just to kind of be in that place and that experience and wonder, what was the energy, what were they feeling in those homelands that they had been for such a long time, and why? Why did they come to the U.S.? And what was all that? So I find myself in the middle as a modern native person living today in California, and we're talking about I'm a local Cali native, in living and working in my general territory, and being who I am. I'm a mixed person. What does it mean to be of these two cultures? And do I constantly be at war with myself, once disliking one side or another? But I decided to embrace all of that and find the peace and just to be a person today who I am. So I find that through music. Growing up as a boy, I love my traditional native music, my Pomo style music. And I also love modern music. Since I was 12 years old, I've been playing the guitar. My dad taught me, and it was a gift, and I love it. I picked up the guitar and never put it down. And so it's a way that I enjoy life, is through music. And I love all kinds of music. So me as a person, I exist in that I want to share and give back the music to people that I enjoy. Songs I sing are songs that I personally would enjoy. Even if nobody else likes it, I'm liking it. And for the opportunity to be able to share my tribal music and culture back to the people all over the world is a blessing. The song that I composed, which I'm going to perform a little later, when I began going down that road, I reached out to my tribe, to my fellow tribal members and family, and I asked them, hey, is it okay if I share this? As many of our tribes, many of our spiritual leaders and communities have certain protocols or certain taboos about sharing our culture. So I wanted to be respectful of that and make sure that I didn't do anything without approval. And I was very honored that my community, for the first time ever, the people of my community were able to agree. Generally, everybody agreed and said, yeah, Paul, this is a good thing. We like what you're doing. Please share this. So as a person from Elam, I am not a spiritual leader in any way. I'm not a roundhouse singer. I'm not a spiritual medicine man. I never claimed to be that. I'm not a healing doctor. I am merely a singer and an entertainer and an educator. But this song and the music I'll share, it comes from me, comes from my people, and with consent and approval. We wish to share this with the world because I think it's beautiful. And there are people all over the USA and people all over the world who have never heard indigenous Californian music of the Pomo tribe. And so that was my contribution that I could give to a greater purpose. So I'm proud to have released this song. It's called Mianache, which means beautiful music. on my last album, World Champion, on 2XG Records. And to be able to share this and give this to everybody around the world. And it's available streaming, it's on YouTube, it's on CD, that's out there. But that was a small contribution that I was able to make for my community, and a meaningful thing. Because I know that when I grew up as a boy, when I was a little boy, I used to speak our Kaitsnu, our southeastern Pomo language, with my grandma, who spoke it all the time, was fluent. Her mom, my great grandma, didn't know English. She only spoke our Pomo language in our tribe. So within 3 generations, it's disappeared. And most of the people in my tribe today very few can speak the language, and those that can, it's very limited. We have just some basic concept of the language and use of it and vocabulary. It's limited. We don't have things like stock market. We don't have things like Apple iPhone. We don't have that type of words or concepts, in our language. But if a community rallies behind their language and engages with it again and wants to, it can come back to life. And it doesn't have to be the same. The way English was spoken 500 years ago versus today, English can change, yet it is still English. It is still by and of those people who live it and own it. And likewise, our native languages, they don't have to be perfectly exact as they were as the past. They can be a living thing, but as long as they are ours and we take that ownership of it, we take that love for it, they will always continue forever. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start in with it. This is a song called Menake. This is from the album World Champion by myself, Paul Stewart, on 2XG Records. That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. So that driving 4 beat, I love that sound. Every time I hear our traditional Pomo music, I can't help but want to get up and dance too. I was never a roundhouse dancer in my tribe, but as just a community member, I would go and attend roundhouse ceremonies, and I've gone recently too when I feel like I need that connection, or that song and that healing. But that's our energy, that great spirit, that passion, that love for life, that's what has kept us going. 11 people. There was a time in the 1830s that we fought against Salvador Vallejo, who came attacking into Lake County to round up Native American slaves and attack villages, and we challenged him and fought back, and maybe that's part of the reason why we survived. That's in our older history. But Elam, in our more recent history, sometime about 50 years after that, there was a very toxic mine that actually opened up next to our tribe. There's an oil painting from the day actually that shows these business investors who had come to our tribe and probably, asked or let us know, like, hey, we're going to open up this mine next to you people. Do you mind? And all that. And it was quite a time. And maybe we didn't realize what it was at the time, but they first opened as a borax mine. It later became a sulfur mine. That's why the name Sulfur Bank Mine. And that our reservation, the government's original name for it, when our reservation was legally deeded to us in the 1930s, was called Sulfur Bank Rancheria, Elam Indian Colony, Sulfur Bank Rancheria. So it was a sulfur mine. It was a gold mine. They found a little bit of gold there, and then it was a natural site for mercury. So it was a mercury mine, and there was mercury being used during the mining of the gold, and there was the discovery of the natural mercury in the ground. And then the mining companies and the people that managed it never managed it appropriately. They let the mercury and all the runoff spill into the lake. We live on the shores of Clear Lake in Northern California, and we were a very marine living type of people. We lived on an island. We lived on the shore. We were constantly in the water, living and eating the fish and the plant life all around the lake. So the mercury tainted the water and the animals and the plant life. It also tainted the soil on our reservation. So my generation, my parents' generation, everyone living on the reservation was tested back in the early 90s, and everybody was found to be at least 2 or 3 times higher of mercury poisoning in our body than the federal government deems to be safe. I believe my aunt was actually found to be at 14 times the level, who had been living on the reservation, spending a lot of time in nature and eating the fish and playing in the dirt. So it's caused a lot of suffering at Elam. Many of us have issues, and it's a super fun site. The government, the EPA, is now coming in to clean it up and repair it, but the damage has been done, and a lot of it's irreversible. So our people now, we can't for thousands of generations. We ate the fish. We gathered the tules for our housing and our clothes, and the tule root for our food, and all of that. And we can't do that anymore. So we have to live in today's circumstances. No more fishing, no more hunting, no more gathering. We have to. So what do we do now? We get jobs. We go to the grocery store like everybody else. Here come, oh boy, Whole Foods. But a long time ago, Whole Foods meant the food that was coming right out of the earth that we were surrounded by. We lived in beauty and abundance, but things have happened that have changed our society. And so we need to share these stories and teach the truth so that we can work on improving the society, get it back in a better direction. Thank you so much. I'd like to share another song with you folks. So that is some traditional Pomo style. I love music. So I moved away from the reservation when I was a teenager due to some tribal issues. Our tribe had suffered from, like all tribes, we've suffered from assimilation and attempted genocide and troubles. And that inner turmoil had sometimes brought about torture amongst ourselves. And so there have been instances of violence, outbreaks, and other problems plagued, and mismanagement of tribal organizations within our tribe. So there was a time where we had to leave our reservation, for safety and for other matters. So I don't live on the reservation, though. I grew up there. Moving into the cities or suburbs of San Francisco, I live in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County. I had the blues as a young man, and I heard the blues when I was about 12 or 13. And I connected with it, and the sound and the feeling, the passion of it made sense. So it certainly is not my blues is from the Black and African American culture, but it was something I could connect to and relate to. And by no means do I appropriate it, but I share in it, and I love to emulate and honor those creators. And just to say, my first hero, what made me want to play the guitar was B.B. King. When I heard B.B. King, I thought that was the coolest sound in the world. So I asked my dad, "Dad, can you show me how to do that?" And he didn't even know how to play guitar like that, but he gave me a guitar, gave me the tools and the knowledge to try to figure it out. He said, Paul, you figure it out yourself. So I spent days and days in my bedroom with my guitar, just picking at those notes until I was able to make it go. And when I do that, I feel good again. I feel whole through that expression, through music and just enjoying it. So in cross-cultural collaboration, I am native, but here I am emulating a traditional African-American music, an American music. And then I bring my culture to it. I'm bringing pomo and the blues together in the modern world, because that's who I am. I am today. I am a native today. I'm not the native of the classic Western movies of old. You know, I'm not riding on a horse and hunting a buffalo. I'm Paul. I'm a real native. I am an Elim person living now. But because and in all honesty, diversity is the way to innovation, and innovation is the way for us to continue to thrive and succeed. So there's good ideas everywhere if we open our minds to it. But while I have a little bit of time, I want to go back and honor some of the past too, and I honor some of my great historical music heroes before. We can all remember the glory of the 70s and the great band Redbone, a Native American band who had a big hit, which I covered on my album from 2020, the album called Double Down by the artist Twice as Good, which is me and my dad. My dad plays rhythm guitar. So this is Twice as Good. Come and get your love. Sing along out there in Zoom land. Come and get your love. so much. Well, so it's it in Southern Pomo, Yawi. Thank you. So yeah, that's some of the music I do. I like to share a lot of my students. They want me to sing in class. I say, "Ah, da, da, da. That's a special ticket. You got to go to the concerts for that." But I love music. I love teaching. I've been doing music professionally since I was 18, right out of high school, studying at college, playing gigs on the weekend. I began to teach Native American studies as a grad student when I was working on my master's, and I began as a teaching assistant to the great Dr. Greg Saris, who was chairman of Grayton Rancheria, Southern Pomo and Coast Miwok, and he was also a professor. He was a professor at UCLA for many years, and later became a professor at Sonoma State University, where I did my grad studies. I began a doctorate program, but then the COVID pandemic hit. I had to stop. So, as things settle down, I get to a better place in life, I will pick up and complete my studies. But I've been teaching since 2016, and I like it. I've shared the story of mostly my specialty is in California history and the local history Bay Area and the greater state. I focus on those courses where I teach history courses for California at Sonoma State and at San Francisco State. And I also do an online course at Laney College in Oakland. And so many people, the students, most of my students are non-native, the majority, well over, and they know almost nothing. People say, "What do you mean? There's Indians in San Francisco?" I say, "Yes, there have always been in and around." And so just to let people know, and being a professor at San Francisco State, San Francisco was the first College of Ethnic Studies in the U.S. They opened their college and became as part of the settlement of the great student protests of 1968 and the whole protest era and the revolution, cultural revolution in San Francisco that brought about that as the first university. So I'm proud to be there and be part of that history, to follow in the footsteps of those great students of the past who brought about that, and leaders like Richard Oakes, who then, being in those courses at Native American Studies, then took people out to Alcatraz and started the whole Alcatraz occupation and protest. And from Alcatraz, that brought national attention to the plight of Native Americans, and all that we'd been going through from the 50s and 60s with the relocation programs and the reservation terminations, and just that sort of soft and deceptive assimilation. Like, hey, come join America, get a job, get a retirement account and save money. Don't worry about your old language, come work in the factory, and we get so mixed up in our daily life and making money and paying bills, we sometimes forget, about our culture. We forget about our homelands. We forget about those things. So even I go out there all over the world, and I'm busy and I'm working hard all the time. I know who I am. So Ilem Book, and everywhere I go, I want to let people know that, and let them know that my people, my music is beautiful, and my people are beautiful, So person is Mthiwi, and people is Umthemfo, of the Alem people, Umthemfo. We are beautiful, and all indigenous peoples are beautiful. We all are wonderful and have our own unique ways, and so it's having that love and appreciation for ourselves. And this is our day to celebrate, and every day is our day to celebrate ourselves and bring our gifts to the world and share and collaborate and enjoy those other gifts of the things. So I can take something like the guitar, which came from Spain, and the blues, which came from Black and African peoples, mixed with European musical elements and those concepts, which was given birth in America. And I could take my culture and I can take that and put it together and make something new that represents me and represents today. So, and I encourage all of you, that's the same. If I have time, I'd like to share just one more song. So I do a lot of blues, I do a little bit of R&B styles, and then this is a really unique song. This song is written by a native musician and artist as well, Ross Kadee. He's the lead vocalist of a famous group, Audio Pharmacy, and he's also a solo artist himself, and he released an album just last year, I believe, and he wrote this song. It's called Seasons. And Ross is my buddy. I call him my distant cousin. We often play and perform together in and around events in San Francisco at times. But this is a song from Ross that I covered and released on my album, World Champion. And this is called Seasons. So, honoring another native artist and a songwriter, contemporary artist, who also brings those traditions and that poemal spirit into his works. My love is stronger than sun rays in the summertime, and my love is longer than the roads in the countryside. You're making me better, you're healing me deep inside. Whatever the weather, I'm ready to take a ride. Listen, yeah. Summer, autumn, fall, winter, spring, have it all. When I'm not around, you can call, and I'll be right there, right in the groove. My love is stronger than the waves of the ocean side, and I love it longer than the reach of the hands of time. You're making me better, opening up outside. Let's turn up this record. I'm ready to take a ride. Woo, yeah. Summer, autumn, fall, winter, spring, have it all. When I'm not around, baby, you can call, and I will be right there, right in the groove. Right in the groove. Oh, thank you so much. Atia Damsit in Southeastern Pomo. It means I love you. Thank you so much, everybody. Happy Indigenous Day. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, CSU Stanislaus, for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. I wish you all the best, folks, and stay on your journey and follow your heart wherever it may lead you. And as long as you're following your heart, you're going the right way.
Yeah, okay, Paul, thank you so much. That was great. I think everybody else is probably feeling what I'm feeling right now. So thank you for that. This is meant to be a celebration, and that certainly felt like it. Finally, tonight we have Chunya Johnson, who you've already heard briefly earlier, performing a song. He'll give us some more music and talk a little bit about some of his language work. Chunya Johnson is a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. He's a storyteller, educator, drummer, and singer. He's taught Choctaw language. He's taught stickball, which is our primary tribal sport. And he's done many other things for the California Choctaw Association, as well as several other groups and organizations around California. He currently teaches Choctaw language online. And he's worked with numerous colleges and universities, with schools, tribal TANF programs, and multiple tribes on various kinds of projects. He's an active advocate for decolonization, and he currently resides in Sonora, California. Mr. Chunya Johnson, welcome and thank you.
Palito, thank you so much for having me. Not my first time doing teachings for CSU, so I think some of my information is a little outdated. I no longer live in Sonora. I'm now in Happy Camp, California. Uh, so I was asked to talk a little bit about the culture and this theme of resistance and renewal. Uh, my name is Chonya. My full name is Chonya Nawatabi Johnson. I'm a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I grew up in a pretty mixed background. Both of my parents are part Native and part white. My dad's dad is from Tamaha, Oklahoma, and he's Choctaw, and that was primarily the side that I grew up around. And my mom's mom is Mascalero Apache. Uh, that I was around anytime we would go and visit New Mexico. And uh, from a young age, I was around a lot of the language and the ceremonies and the old stories. And uh, so I try to pass those on the best I can. And listening to all of the music today, the listening to about language revitalization and all of those things. I've been teaching language. I was asked to teach language about 5 or 6 years ago, and I've been teaching it ever since. Uh, my wife, she's also Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Her grandma was very fluent. Uh, uh, and it didn't really get passed on past her and her family. And her grandma ended up getting dementia and reverting back to only speaking Choctaw. And so that led to her family not really being able to understand. And that was the case for a lot of our people. When we get older and we revert back to what we grew up around, and then having your family not really being able to understand, which is why I was asked to teach back in 2000, about, I think it was 2019, maybe 2018. And in hearing the music today and hearing the that talk that I really enjoyed about language revitalization, it made me think of one of our old stories. And one of our traditional stories is about the woodpecker. And the story, it starts out it doesn't start out as a happy story. And in the story, back in the day, as Choctaw people were originally the first people of Mississippi and uh, Eastern Louisiana and Western Alabama, and that goes down into the Gulf of Mexico. And so some of our people were around the ocean, and we had villages on that coast. And uh, so a lot of our teachings are about the canoe and traveling and learning from the Hachotokni, the Hachotokni sea turtle, teaching us how to travel those waters. And in the story, it talks about an accident happening with a canoe, and a woman dies, and her children die. And the only survivor in this accident is her husband and the father of these children. And sometimes when we go through something traumatic, sometimes when we have a great loss, sometimes it kind of hardens us, and we think that the whole world should stop, and when it doesn't, it kind of gets to us. And so that's what happened to him. He was kind of hardened, and he kind of just wanted to be left alone. And anytime anybody would try to be around him, he kind of pushed them away. And So he kind of isolated himself, and there was one day when a woodpecker was flying above him, and the woodpecker looked down and he could see that this man was in pain. And he said, this woodpecker said to himself, Apela sabana, I want to help him. And he goes, I know of this medicine that grows by the river. And if he could, and I think if I could get him to lead him to that medicine, it would really help him. And so this woodpecker, in the morning time, he flies back to the man's house and he flies down and he goes on top of, and he latches onto the side of the man's house and he does what woodpeckers do. He starts pecking at the house, and the man and the man hears this this knocking on his house, and he's saying, "Who's here? I don't want anybody here." And so he goes outside and he sees this woodpecker pecking at his house, and uh, he doesn't like to be disturbed. He's not happy about it. And so in our language, one thing that we say is Misha. And Misha means like it's kind of like our version of saying shoo. It's saying go away. It's kind of something that we'll say to animals if you're busy and your dog's jumping on you a little too much. Is it Misha? And so this man went outside and he sees this bird and he yells as loud as he can, Misha! And it scares that little bird, and the little bird flies away. And the little bird says, I'm going to try again tomorrow. And the next day he comes and he pecks at the house, and the man comes out and he sees that little bird again, and now he's just getting mad. Like, why are you bugging me? And he yells at him again, Misha, and scares that little bird away, and he flies off, and he goes, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go again. So the next day he comes back and he starts pecking at the man's house, and the man, he gets even more angry and he starts yelling, Misha, chehaklo iksabano. I don't want to hear you. And so the little bird, he goes away, but the little bird says, this man is in a lot of pain and I'm not going to give up on him. And so he comes down on the fourth day and he starts pecking at the house again. And when the man comes out, he feels this angry and he thinks about why he's angry. He's angry about all the things he's gone through, and he's angry because he wants to be left alone, and he wants to be left alone because of all of these horrible things that he's gone through, all of this loss that he has experienced. And so he starts to break down and he starts talking to that little bird, and he says, I just want to be left alone. I've gone through all of these bad things and I just want to be left alone. And the little bird says, starts talking to him and starts saying, like, I want to give you a medicine. Sayakaya, follow me. So he wanted the man to follow him. And the man was kind of like, in shock that he heard this little bird say this. And so he thought to himself, like, I better at least go see. So a little bird starts flying through the forest, and the man is walking behind, following this little bird. And the bird leads him to the river. And next to the river, there's this plant growing. And in our language, we call this plant uske. Uske is this right here. I don't know how well y'all can see that, but this is uske, what we call it. In English, they call it river cane. And river cane is very important to Southeastern tribes because our river cane, we make a lot of things with it. We strip this down and we make the baskets with it. So all of this is made out of river cane. We make our baskets with these. And even this here, all of these joints have been hollowed out and this has been straightened. And what we do with this, we also make, when we make it this way, we call this uske shumpa. And we make another thing to go with it called shumati. And shumati is this right here. And shomati is the dart. So this is actually a blowgun. And we use this in our tribe to hunt for small animals, to harvest small animals. Oske micha shomati, the blowgun and the dart. And so it's an important plant to us that this little bird led the man to. And so what that woodpecker did, he uh, he found a pretty thick piece of river cane, and he landed on the river cane, and then he did what woodpeckers do. He started pecking at it, and he kept pecking at it, and he made all of these holes, and he made the oskula, the flute. And he gave that flute to the man, and he taught the man how to play it. And the man was a little bit of a better player than me, hopefully. And when the man started to play that music, he heard that music, and it healed his heart. And so that to us, that's like the power of that sound, and like even our language. Our language is medicine. Our language is our medicine. Our music is our medicine. Those prayers that have been passed down, that's our medicine. And uh, and to me, I think that that's a big part of our resilience, is that our culture, our ancestors, our connection to Creator. That's the best resource that we have. And so no matter what you're going through, this is CSU, and going and getting your degree, there's nothing easy about that. But you have you come from a lot of strength. Our Native people, we come from a lot of strength, and that's our strongest resource. uh, uh, so to listen to those songs and learn that language and bring that language back, and that's going to be medicine to you. And when I think of resilience, another story that I want to share with you about resilience. When we talk about resilience in our language, we say inla asakofi, inla asakofi. And that's kind of hard to translate, but for me it is anyways. But inla asakofi, it kind of means to inla means like other or others, and then asakofi kind of means to like mm, to endure, or have the ability to endure. So it's to be able to endure all things around us, is how we describe resilience in our language. And any hardship that might surround us and be able to endure that, and to be able to survive that. And so that takes strength. And one of our symbols of strength, I'm still drinking coffee because I drink coffee all day long. But one of our symbols of strength is Nita, the bear. And so we have a story about the bear in my tribe. And when we say the story, we say Opakekash Nita inhasimbish falayana I haknip kosumato mahli mahli nita imbalamaya wata aleha I mahlichi ahuchit ukla abe chato. And what I said was that long ago, the bear, he had a long he had a long tail. Na in haknipat kusumato. Kusuma means like to smell bad or to stink. And so it's saying that long ago the bear had a long tail and his body stunk. And then that second part that I said about Mahli is the wind, and that talked about how the wind would blow, and that wind would carry that smell of the bear right toward to the hunters. And in this way, the hunters were able to find the bears and kill them. And some tribes don't kill bears, and some tribes view like have ceremony for harvesting bear and view the bear as uh, like a very um, important and ceremonial resource for the oil, their fat that they have and stuff. And my tribe was one that utilized that and had ceremony for the bear lard that we use for a lot of different purposes. And so in the story, the wind is carrying that scent, that stink of the bear that he used to have, and he's carrying it to the hunters, and the hunters find these bears really easily, and they're able to gather them up. And in the story, there's one bear. He goes off to find the wind, and he finds the wind, and he starts talking to the wind, and he starts to grieve and say that, you you take our scent and you give it to the hunters, and and soon, if this doesn't stop, there won't be any more bears. And the wind starts to talk back to the bear, and he says, if you make a sacrifice, that I'll blow that smell off of you. And so the bear agreed to give away his tail. And so the wind started to blow really hard, and the wind blew away the bear's smell, and the wind blew and cut off of that bear's tail. And uh, and so afterwards, the bear, he had a short tail afterwards, but he no longer had that smell, and so the hunters didn't have as easy of a time finding him because of that. And that's our story about the bear. And it kind of, sometimes I tell that story when I worked for different tribes, and different tribes have hired me for diabetes wellness conferences. And anytime I do a conference for diabetes wellness, I usually start out by teaching the language, because that's what I do. I teach language. And I said, and I say, I want everyone here to learn how to say diabetes in the Choctaw language. And so I'm going to teach you guys how to say diabetes in the Choctaw language. How we say diabetes is Ape champule ishtapika. Who can repeat it? Anybody? I don't hear nobody. So so a lot of times when I say that, a lot of people will say, "Oh, that's too long. I can't remember that." Well, why is it long? So I ask, why is it long? And I don't know. It's because when we say diabetes in our language, that's 4 words. Hape champule ishtapika. Hape means salt. Champule means to be sweet. When we say hape champule, that means sweet salt. That's what we call sugar. Isht means with. Abika means to be sick. So when you say hape champule ishtabika, you're saying to be sick with sugar. That's what we call diabetes. And so all these people, they can't remember this word because they're saying it's too long, but it's too long because it's descriptive. And it's descriptive for a reason. It's descriptive because our ancestors didn't have diabetes. Our ancestors didn't deal with the health issues that we deal with today. Diabetes, obesity, all of these things are like epidemics for Native people. And Native people uh, have gone a lot through survive. A lot of my elders growing up were, and some of the people in my family were boarding school survivors. Um, uh, and when a lot of our traditional resources were taken away, it changed how we eat. And a lot of people went hungry. A lot of people were starving. And part of when the government wants to control a people, they want to make you where you don't have your own freedom. And so when you don't have your own freedom is when you are reliant on them to survive. And so the people were reliant on government rations. They were reliant on getting all of these things that Native people had never had before, which was the flour, even when they would bring the coffee. And Native people didn't know what to do with flour. They didn't know what to do with these things because they never worked with them before. And so what they did is they made recipes with these things that no one had ever thought to make before. They would make a dough out of the flour, and they would fry it in the lard, and they would make the fry bread, which is where we get our Indian tacos. Uh, uh, they would roast the the flour and make Indian coffee out of it. They would like any, especially if any Apache people are in here, when we make a tamalecho, where you're making a fry bread dough and then you're wrapping it up in meat and then you're wrapping that up in foil and boiling it and making like a fry bread tamale. And all of those things are delicious, right? But they're survival foods. They're not our traditional way. And so, yeah, they're delicious. And yeah, they're a part of our history of survival. That's also our diabetes. That's also our health issues. That's also the things that we're passing down to our children and saying that these things are cultural. And and so I think back at that story of the bear and saying, you have to make a sacrifice if you want to get that stink off of you. You have to give up a piece of yourself. And so why not take apart the things that are hurting us, hurting our bodies, hurting our children, all of the things that didn't exist to us before colonization, whether it's the diet, whether it's the alcoholism, whether it's the domestic violence, all the things that don't belong to us. We have to make we have to get rid of that thing that had become a part of us. We need to get rid of it if we want that get that stink off, like in that story of the bear. And that's why that bear represents strength to us, and it represents that resilience. That if you're going to use this culture as your sense of strength and resilience, then you have to learn from those stories and apply it to our lives and pass those things down. Uh, I know I'm running a little low on time, so I'm going to sing one more song for you guys. Um, I, uh, I usually we do these things in person, and usually I always like to pray for uh, everybody to have a safe trip home. And even though we get to kind of be comfortable in our own houses right now, I still want to pray for all of you. And like I said before, these songs are our prayers. And so when you sing these, if you can sing along with them, sing along with them, but more importantly, pray with them. I'm going to sing this song. This is how my uncles used to describe this song when I was younger. They would say that this is kind of like they would kind of describe it as like a protection song, saying that you're praying for your loved ones and for your people when you're singing this song, and you're praying for their protection, both physically and spiritually. ho ale ho hare hai 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 hey I oh hey I hey I oh hey he 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 oh hey I hey I oh hey oh hey I oh hey he 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 oh hey I oh hey 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 au yo Dạ ok.
Yeah, okay, Chunya, thank you. Thank you so much. So I just want to thank all of our speakers and performers tonight. I think this was a major success. So it was. So thank you for everything, for your generosity of spirit, and for sharing so much of yourselves with all of us tonight. I think everybody here learned something and enjoyed something and felt something, and that's what we're trying to make happen here. So thank you all very much, Mr. Paul Stewart, Mr. Chunya Johnson, Professor Lee. Thank you so much. And that concludes our event for the evening. So thank you all for coming. An event is an event without somebody there. So thank you all for showing up, and I hope you got something out of it. Thanks again. Please check our website, the Ethnic Studies Department website, for our upcoming events. We have more coming this fall and into the spring. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.